You know how some holidays are really restful and you just lounge around and recuperate from life? This was not one of those holidays. We just got back from 18 days in Japan, and it was definitely a doing things, going places kind of holiday. And even though it had almost 3 weeks there, I still feel like we hardly saw anything, like only a tiny part of Japan geographically. But what did we actually get up to? So we started off in Tokyo, as you do. It was pouring with rain that first day, but thankfully we had great weather the rest of the time. We also at this point went to the first of the bookshops I visited. This was the Tsutaya Books. It's famous as a kind of design museum slash bookstore. Lots of graphic design and architecture and fashion kind of books. There was also a section of Japanese books translated into English, which I generally looked for in every bookstore we went to. It had all the titles that you would expect if you have seen any of the Japanese translations available in the UK. So there's, for example, lots of Haruki Murakami. There was the Coffee Gets Cold series. There were all the Detective Kindaichi series, and then a few of the famous cat books like the Travelling Cat Chronicles and Goodbye Cat, those kind of books. I didn't buy any of them whilst we were in Japan just because I know they're so easily available in the UK. I was really keeping an eye out for titles that I'd never heard of before. They did also have English books translated into Japanese, some of which had exactly the same covers and were immediately recognisable, and some had been redesigned, which was interesting to see the difference between them. And a fair few of the classic murder mysteries, like the Agatha Christie's and the Sherlock Holmes and that kind of thing. But I'd say most of that bookstore was about non-fiction, particularly design books. We stayed with our friend Kitty in this tiny rural town called Kaibara. It's in the Tampa Valley area. So that was a bit different from all my previous Japanese holidays, going super rural, having her show us the local little secret highlights. Like we climbed up a local mountain that was famous for having an old castle on it that's now ruins, but it was an amazing viewpoint over the whole valley. It's funny, on this holiday I was reading The Village of Eight Graves by Yokomizo the whole holiday, even though I was there for 18 days. I didn't get more than like halfway through the book. I hadn't held much hope of going anywhere that was the same setting as the book because it's a fictional village, but funnily enough, quite a few of the initial scenes of the book happen in Kobe because that's the nearest town to this village of Eight Graves. And it's described as being a tiny village in a valley, and it could have been Kaibara. Like, from the clues that we had, could have been the Tampa Valley. It's very similar to Kaibara. So it didn't end up being far off, actually. So Gemma, what did you buy on this big holiday? Well, the answer is I bought a lot of stuff. So much that I had to buy a new suitcase whilst I was out there, a new larger suitcase. It's very hard to go to Japan and not buy anything. I think abundance is part of the culture. That's my excuse anyway. So first thing I thought you might be interested in is I got a couple of goshuin books. So these aren't novels like I'd normally talk about. They're concertina books like this. Traditionally they're used to collect temple seals. That's what my other goshuin book has, but this one with the Studio Ghibli design of the spirits, some of the spirits at the bathhouse from Spirited Away. This one I used as a kind of scrapbook. So I've got some of my spare Eki stamps in here and some just little bits and bobs, and because I bought the Instax camera, I was able to print little Instax photos to put in as well. So yeah, train tickets, stickers, stamps, bits and bobs, paraphernalia, that's all in there. And then the second goshuin book is more traditional. So we visited a lot of shrines. Probably the easiest way to show you this is from, so if I lift it up. So these are the temple seals that I mentioned. It's usually black, white and red, but a few colour variations. And as we get to the bottom here, you might be able to see that these are no longer from temples. This is from a castle. This is from an aquarium. And there are a couple that are actually from bookshops. So there's like a joint marketing venture throughout some of the bookshops in Japan where you can buy goshuin there. So this one is from Tsutaya and this one is from Maruzen in Nagoya. And then a couple more on the back. So I ran out of space on the main one. So on this side I put the coloured ones from Fushimi Inari. I also bought a few special edition goshuin which are laser cut paper. They are like double sized, so I didn't stick them in the book, but they are stuck up on my wall here. I'll just show you. So this top one is from a shrine in Tokyo whose name escapes me at the moment, but I'll put it on the screen. This middle one is celebrating 1,000 years of Hachiman Shrine in Kaibara, and this bottom one is again the aquarium. And then in terms of what I actually bought from those bookstores, once I had the luggage capacity to take some books, then we were at the tail end of the holiday, so I didn't have to lug the weight around. A Japanese murder mystery I haven't actually heard of. So it's called The Meiji Guillotine Murders. It's weird because it's published by Pushkin, who published the like the Decagon House Murders and the Detective Kindaichi series and all that. But they, I guess, have less marketing budget for this. I don't know if this is a series or a standalone. The Meiji Guillotine Murders by Futaro Yamada. Tokyo, 1869. It is the dawn of the Meiji era in Japan, but the scars of the recent bloody civil war are yet to heal. The new regime struggles to keep the peace as old scores are settled and dangerous new ideas flood into the country from the west. A new police force promises to bring order to this land of feuding samurai warlords, and Chief Inspector Kazuki and Kawaji are two of its brightest stars. Together they investigate a spree of baffling murders across the capital, moving from dingy drinking dens to high-class hotels in the heart of the Imperial Palace. Can they solve these seemingly impossible crimes and save the country from slipping into chaos once more? So give that a go. Then a contemporary fiction, so not a murder mystery for a change. Idol Burning, hang on, by Rin Usami. High school student Akari has only one passion in her life, her oshi, her idol. His name is Masaki Ueno, best known as 1/5 of Japanese pop group Maza Maza. Akari's dedication to her oshi consumes her days completely, until he disgraces himself and Akari's world goes into a tailspin. I have a feeling I've heard of this and it gets a bit like dark and twisty. I hope so anyway. Then I got a manga copy of I Am a Cat. So this is actually a very famous novel, a classic Japanese novel, but it's quite a chunky book, so I'm not quite sure how the adaptation into manga made it, but what changes it makes or anything like that, but I'll give it a go. I think it doesn't have a 1 on the spine or anything, so I'm assuming it's not just part of a series, but anyway. I Am a Cat is set in early 20th century Tokyo, narrated by a world-weary feline who is thrown headlong into human society. His story begins as a kitten, alone and without a name, who finds his way into the home of an English teacher. Here he observes many people coming and going and remarks on all the foolishness he sees. He provides a running commentary about his master's family, their friends and neighbours, describing their foibles and failings with great humour and wit. This beautiful illustrated manga edition takes us on an entertaining look at life from the viewpoint of a cat who may be small but is wise beyond his years. This is such a well-known book that the author is actually on the 1000 yen note in Japan. Then at the very last moment in the airport departure gates area, I got, along a similar vein, She and Her Cat, another manga adaptation of a famous novel. This is the story of Miyu, a woman who lives alone with her cat, Chobi. As Miyu navigates the world of adulthood, she discovers both the freedom and loneliness that comes from living independently, and Chobi learns of the outside world through her action. Time drifts slowly for Miyu and her cat, but the harsh reality of the world soon catches up. See, now I thought She and Her Cat was a collection of short stories, actually. Maybe I'm getting mixed up with another book. There are a lot of Japanese books about cats. I'm thinking of doing a reading vlog of all my cat books, a fair few of which will be Japanese. And then finally, I'd never heard of this one before, it just looked cool. Where the Wild Ladies Are by Aoko Matsuda, translated by Polly Barton. A busybody aunt who disapproves of hair removal, a pair of door-to-door saleswomen hawking portable lanterns, a cheerful lover who visits every night to take a luxurious bath, a silent house caller who babysits and cleans while a single mother is out working. Where the Wild Ladies Are is populated by these and many other spirited women who also happen to be ghosts. This is a realm in which jealousy, stubbornness, and other excessive feminine passions are not to be feared or suppressed, but rather cultivated. And chances are, a man named Mr. Tay will notice your talents and recruit you, dead or alive, to join his mysterious company. In this witty and exuberant collection of linked stories, Aoko Matsuda takes the rich, millennia-old tradition of Japanese folk tales, shape-shifting wives and foxes, magical trees and wells, and wholly reinvents them, presenting a world in which humans are consoled, guided, challenged, and transformed by the only sometimes visible forces that surround them. Doesn't that sound good? So yeah, only 5 books. I thought that was rather restrained. I think I got brought 5 books back from Sweden recently, and I was in Japan for twice as long. So that's the book section of this video over. If you carry on watching, you can see some general information about our holiday in Japan, but I'm aware that not everybody wants to see that. Not everybody wants to look at the holiday snaps from other people. But it was a beautiful country, and we travelled around a fair bit, like as much as we could, and we're on the move quite a lot. But yeah, keep watching if that's what you want to see. Whilst we were in Tokyo, we also went to the new Teamlabs exhibition. It's called Borderless, and the idea is that I think it's a permanent space for them, and there's no particular route you have to follow through the exhibitions. There's no maps or guidance. The idea is that there's no borders, and you can just wander around as much as you like and visit the different rooms and hallways and areas. Some of it is projection mapping, some of it is altered just by very high powered lights. They did repeat designs I've seen in other Teamlabs, like the Crystal World room. I guess that's going to be in every Teamlabs space, it's so famous and popular. They repeated some other designs I've seen, like the waterfalls and the flowers and the butterflies, where it's mapping your movements, and so if you touch the butterflies, they'll fall down. If you touch the water that's coming off the waterfall, you'll divert the path of the water, that kind of thing. They had a new area that I'd not seen in other Teamlabs before, which is a tea room. So you order either tea or sorbet, and they put it on the table in front of you. And I mean, this is just theorizing, but Chris thinks that there's infrared cameras above you, so they know where the camera knows whether a hot thing has been put down or a cold thing has been put down, and then the projection is mapped onto your food. And if you've ordered hot tea, it's flowers blossoming, and if you've ordered a cold sorbet, it's kind of leaves and plants growing out of your sorbet. And if you pick up your food or drink, then the flowers or plants will disperse, just scatter across the table. And when you put your temperature food back down, the projection will start over again with like a flower blossoming. So that was really nifty. Then we headed off away from Tokyo to our first kind of day trip excursion. First of all was the Nakasendo Trail. This was a day hike, or a walk really, there wasn't a lot of exertion. Going between some old postal towns, so they've been really well restored historic towns. We started the trail in Magome and then went through Sumago and carried on all the way to Nagiso to catch the train back to Nagoya. Can't remember how long it took us, but most of the day, and it was really hot. I mean, beautiful weather, beautiful views, but scorching hot. And we got to do, you know, the cute things like ringing the bear bells along the way, and we saw some toads, or heard toads. Walked through beautiful forests, as well as the towns themselves that had been restored. Magome was really busy with the start of the trail. Lots of children and dogs in strollers being pushed up to the viewpoint, but after you're past the viewpoint it was much calmer and less people. There was also a very nice tea house halfway along the route, and then inside there we saw a picture of Joanna Lumley sitting with the owner. We have watched her travel documentary about Japan, but I didn't particularly remember her stopping halfway along the Nakasendo, so it was a nice surprise. Lots of people stop at Sumago, but I assume you have to catch the bus onwards somewhere because there isn't a train there. So yeah, I would recommend carrying on to Nagiso. It was only a little bit further and it meant we could catch the train back easily. Then our next sort of trip out from Nagoya was actually an overnight trip to a town called Gero. That's an onsen town. So we bathed in the hot waters and we stayed at the most beautiful traditional old inn. It was like something out of Spirited Away, honestly. It was slightly set back from the town up the side of a hill, so it's quite steep to get up there, but it meant that we were in the forest and it's just gorgeous views. We stayed in a really traditional old style room. We had futon beds that night. We weren't able to use the actual main onsen bit because all the private baths had been booked up that day. There was only four of them, I think, and I don't want to go into a public bath, partly because I've got tattoos, partly because just don't want to bathe in front of strangers, thanks. But we did go to the public foot baths, so that was enough for me. Then we moved on to Kyoto, did all that kind of stuff of like going to the old town traditional area, and did lots of shopping in Kyoto actually because they have a Nintendo store. So Chris was very happy, got himself his little keychain things. There was an Animal Crossing section, so I was happy. We did a lot of shopping on this holiday. We stayed at this really weird art museum hotel. There was this creepy dollhouse structure in the corner of the room that was kind of like melting and oozing. Then we went back to Nagoya because just outside of Nagoya is Ghibli Park. And this was one of the main reasons for us visiting for this whole holiday, really. Because all the main areas are open now. It was open in phases, but it's all open now. So that took an entire day of lots of walking around. But it was totally worth it. I do think there's maybe not enough information online about the different sections and how big they are. Like Ghibli Warehouse and the Valley of the Witches are so much bigger than other areas like the Princess Mononoke area. And even the Totoro area is not huge. It's one sculpture, giant sculpture of a Totoro, and then the house that was a recreation of the house in the film that the two little girls live in. So we did kind of rushed ourselves a bit to try and see everything, and I kind of wish we hadn't. I wish we'd spent more time in the Valley of the Witches, because that contained elements from some of my favourite films, like Howl's Moving Castle and Kiki's Delivery Service. Then we went further west down into Hyogo Province, because that is where a friend of ours lives. She's out there teaching English on the JET program. We met her in Kobe and went to Atoa, which is an aquarium that's also an art exhibition. The room with the koi and the goldfish was so beautiful and amazing. Really gorgeous. Somebody described Atoa as being like if Teamlabs made an aquarium, and that's a pretty good description. Legal wildlife trade of arowana, because they're so important to like Chinese culture, and they go for like tens of thousands of dollars. Not this colour, this is the common colour, silver. Well, not even that, kind of grey, but the red ones go for mega money, and so there's a big like problem with trafficking. Then it was back to Tokyo, really. It's a bit more big city stuff. I'm trying to think what we did in those last couple of days. Bit more shopping, bit more wandering around, visiting the little suburbs. I went to Tokyo Tower without Chris, actually. For an evening. He was busy elsewhere. Yeah, that was our kind of last opportunity to spend all our cash that we'd converted and fill up that suitcase that I'd bought. And it was in these last few days that I allowed myself to do some proper book shopping, because I hadn't wanted to do it earlier because I didn't want to carry the weight of books around. The good thing about looping back to Tokyo is I had kept my eye out on a couple of bookstores to go back to. And of course we stuffed our faces with lots of yummy food. It was slightly tricky to be a vegetarian there, just because there's so much fish broth used in a lot of the recipes. I kind of operated a don't ask, don't tell approach to the soup stock. As long as the visible stuff that you could see on top of the ramen was vegetarian, then I just rolled with it. And knowing that kitsune ramen is vegetarian was a big bonus. Anytime I saw that on the menu, yep, that'll do, that's it.
Gemma's balls are definitely better.
The only tricky spots were the more rural places, because we were visiting areas that were kind of known for particular meat productions, so like Hida pork and Kobe beef and that kind of thing. So Chris had a great time stuffing his face. Thanks very much for watching. If we do go back to Japan in a couple of years' time, what do you recommend we check out and see? I'm thinking either the snow in Hokkaido or the complete opposite, with scuba diving in Okinawa. All right, thanks very much. Have a nice rest of your week.